Hello and welcome to the Big Smoke Chronicles, where we dive into conversations with seasoned professionals to help inspire students, young professionals and senior leaders to learn, thrive and grow. I'm your host, Abi.
And I'm Ardi. I'm supporting Abi in this podcast.
And I'm a business student here in London, passionate about exploring the real stories behind the industries within the business world. Today, we are thrilled because we are joined by Edward Till, a seasoned professional in finance with over 30 years of experience specializing in trade and supply finance. From studying economics, banking, finance at Cambridge to having senior roles at the likes of Citibank and HSBC to now many things you're doing, one of which is being the COO at Levantor Capital, which is a more entrepreneurial, specialized financial firm that has helped finance around $25 billion in
counting.
Trade. I know, that's really impressive. So $25 billion in trade. And you've also working for Toastmasters International, which is an organization that helps professionals and executives excel in their public speaking and communication.
And leadership skills as well.
And leadership skills.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack and dive into in this episode. And Edward brings a rich insight into this conversation. So without further ado, Edward, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Abi Ardi. It's lovely to meet you both. And thank you very much for having me today.
And it's brilliant because it's a full circle moment for you.
It is indeed.
Because you used to live in that apartment block just down there.
Yes, this is the Cascades where I lived for 5 years back in the noughties. I can see my old balcony. And yes, this view, perhaps not quite as high as this, but this view was once mine. So it's lovely to see it again as well.
Yeah, so full circle moment right here. But I thought we could just start with the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What sparked your interest in finance? How did this journey start for you in your professional journey?
That's actually a very good question. I mean, I didn't really sort of decide that one day I wanted to go into banking. It was more that it sort of was a process. Yeah. At university, I studied economics, and the banking and finance paper was the one I think I found the most interesting. Really, though, my interest was more into languages. And I think actually under many other circumstances, I might have done a degree in languages.
Okay.
So what I was really looking for at the end of university was something that could sort of bring that all together. And I was just very fortunate and, very, very lucky to have the opportunity to go and start my career in Warsaw in 1994. So it was a very different time. And it was an opportunity both to get into some real frontier banking and also to learn a new language. Yeah. So really couldn't have been better. So it kind of came together in that way.
Yeah. And what was the transition like from university into your first big boy job in the city?
Well, it wasn't in the city. It was in Warsaw. So so the answer is probably very different from anyone else. I mean, it's certainly not something that many people would, I think, even want to do. But no, the transition was hard. I mean, Ardi, you live abroad, and the challenges of doing so. It can be the making of you, but it's also extremely hard. I mean, going from a university setting where you have your friends, you have everything set up, and life is in many ways organized for you, to being thrown into a very different setting where you don't really know people. Where initially I didn't speak the language. Where initially, there's a lot that's very, very different. Yeah, it's quite hard, but I would say two things really. I mean, I always wanted to work abroad, and I say to anyone who wants to do it, get it out your system, go and enjoy it, because really, you don't want to get to a much later stage of your life and regret not having had the opportunity to go abroad. And just, different experiences are really what makes you. And I think and my attraction as well was that, I mean, the story of the end of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall, which happened while I was a sixth former, was something I found incredibly exciting. Yeah. And through university, I also studied a lot about the transitions of economies. I mean, you're talking there, you've got the books about Lenin on the bookshelf. I mean, there were loads and loads of books that talked about how capitalist systems could become communist. There were no books about how communist countries could become capitalist. And it was just amazing to be in a country that was in the throes of doing this. And we were even making up words in Polish that they still use today because they just did not exist. So it was a fantastic experience. So yes, initially very hard. but I do not regret it at all. I think it was really the making of me. Well, I started off doing the commercial paper, and that was probably about 2 years. Then I did maybe 2 or 3 years as a relationship manager. And then I think the big change came when I was offered the opportunity to look at trade finance. And I think it's worth saying, I mean, one of the things we'll talk about is how banking has changed. Yeah. Traditionally, trade finance was very much an operational area. I mean, most people who did it would have been in documentary operations, very much an operational area. I was part of the first generation that sort of saw it as more of as a business direction, developing solutions, developing new ways of doing things, and shifting away from documentary operations more towards finance.
Okay.
And that sort of came about 5 years into my career, and I just took to it. It just kind of combined all of my skills, because it was, on the one hand, a lot about structuring transactions, about the way that you put things together, but also it was very international. And the other thing I would say to anyone in any work situation is figure out what skills you've got that other people don't have. I mean, I was constantly very useful in Citibank Poland because I was the young person who had perfect English. So even things like, I mean, I used to check the weekly reports that went out on the state of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, and I got very good at talking about different ways that the market had essentially not moved this week. We're trying to make it sound interesting. And I mean, even down to the fact that when you rang the switchboard, you got my voice saying, "Welcome to Citibank Poland, our business hours are."
That's brilliant.
And in fact, I have a wonderful story of that. A friend of mine had got onto a train and had his credit card stolen. He tried to call Citibank to have it cancelled, and he got my voice saying, "Our business hours are between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m." And he was saying, "Get lost, Ed! Get lost, Ed!"
Personal connection to that.
So I felt guilty at that point. So, but the point was, I had those skills.
And for those listening who are not familiar with what trade finance is, can you help simplify that?
Yeah, I mean, trade finance is essentially about, I mean, as the name suggests, it's financing flows of goods and services. So you're typically dealing with imports or exports and the way that they're financed, although it can be domestic as well. It's a lot about managing risks in those transactions and also then finding the ways to finance them. So you're dealing a lot with sort of credit risk, but also performance risk as well. And as I say, you're often dealing with things in an international setting. So you might be, for example, using letters of credit, which are a very old instrument, but very well provided around the world, bills of exchange, which is what I do now. And you're sort of relying on these international ways of doing things. And trade finance has really changed. I mean, I was part of the original group when supply chain finance became a thing. That was a new thing in the noughties and is now so much more center of plate than it was. I mean, in the early days, it was a specialist thing. It also brings in things like factoring, invoice finance, and so on, which is also an area in which I've been. So it's a range of products, but what they do is that they're essentially there to help companies trade. They provide the liquidity to buy and sell things, and to manage inventory and so on. And
I'm sure you've been involved in so many projects in this. In reflection, what has been one of your favorite projects that you've been involved with and why?
I think maybe I can say actually in a different way that the time I was kind of most excited was when this is again quite early on. We used to, we had a training center in Istanbul, which again seems very, very glamorous that we would all go there. But meeting people from around, I was part of the Central and Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa, so the SAMEA region. And we would sort of get together and we'd talk about the deals that we'd done. And it was wonderful to meet people from all of these different emerging markets and all of the transactions they were working on and talking about it and seeing how similar it was. I remember there were some guys from Lebanon who'd been financing a cement factory and dealing with that. And I'd done my air separation unit. I mean, I'm terrible at chemistry, but somehow industrial gases became one of my things. So, being able to finance this air separation unit that's probably still making carbon dioxide to this day. And there were different ways that we were doing these transactions. But what we had in common was that we were all sort of problem solving to make things happen.
The world has undergone significant changes
it has.
in the past 20 years, from the financial crisis in 2008 to technological changes, to recently COVID-19 and many, many more things that have happened in the world. But how have you seen your industry evolve and change?
Yes, I mean, it did. I mean, I was very lucky, I think, to be, and here we are, not far away from where Lehman's used to be as well. I mean, if you went that way, you'd see where Lehman's was. I was very fortunate to have moved to Poland at that stage. I didn't have to see Canary Wharf during that stage. I saw it on television and thought, God, that's near where I used to live.
Yeah.
And it was not something I would have been very keen to see. Yeah, it was a very, very tough time. It made you really think about what banking is and what can go wrong. I actually, I think though it was a great educator because you do begin to understand what these risks are about. I mean, the nature of financial services is you do get these crises, and these crises can be quite localized or they can be, quite generalized, as it was in the case of the financial crisis. I think what you see then is the necessity to have planning to be able to manage risk. And when you're going through the scenario planning of what can go wrong, you're thinking, yeah, these things can happen.
Yeah.
These events can happen where banks, you kind of had always assumed, well, a bank can never go bankrupt. Well, it happened. So think about it. So I think there is that element. And of course, there's a cyclicality in financial services, is that, there tends to be phases when everything's growing and people are doing lots of transactions. And then there's a period of pulling back and there's more regulation and so on. And that is a cycle that you see, and you have to be aware of it and to ride it. But you also need to see that it will change back again. How
did you find that transition of going from the structure of, HSBC and Citi to a more entrepreneurial space?
It is different. I mean, and it's probably not for everyone.
Yeah.
I think you have to learn to leave your ego by the door in any entrepreneurial setting. I think if you're working in a large organization, it's very easy to get in, particularly as you get more senior, to get into a mentality of, my computer breaks down, so there's somebody in the technology department who'll come out and, I'll get that sorted. And, you never really have to worry about anything. And if you're, if you in your office, you want to move something, somebody comes and moves it for you. And in an entrepreneurial setting, the thing I like most is that you just have to get on with doing it. So, I mean, the example I always give is window cleaning, which is we had one office where there was a kind of slightly inside window and it wasn't being cleaned properly, and it went out onto a balcony. And, I could keep going downstairs to the reception desk in our place and saying, oh, why do you clean the windows? Why do you clean the windows? And at a certain point, I thought, that's ridiculous. I'm going to do it myself. There's a balcony out there. I can get onto the balcony. I can learn how to clean these windows. So I went out on the balcony. There was old shoes and people had left cigarette things. So it was like, fair enough, I'm going to clean all of this up too. And then clean the windows from the outside. And the difference when I went back in and I could see the sunlight coming through. And, I use that story a lot in the office because that's the mentality you have to have to be in an enterprising situation. You have to be able to just roll your sleeves up and get it done. I think the other thing it does is it means you have a much more personal response to what you do. Large organizations have a great tendency to sort of dampen down your emotions. Is that and it's inevitably so, because there's a lot of people there's a lot of things you have to do. When you're in a more entrepreneurial setting, the tendency is either to get, when things go well, you can get very happy. And when things go badly, you take it very personally. Yeah. And so that sort of amplitude of emotions is much greater. So, something to be aware of and not allow yourself to be, dragged too much into sadness when things don't work out. But on the other hand, it means you're living a bit more, I suppose.
And I guess it's learning how to manage your time and how to schedule well.
Prioritize.
Yeah, prioritize.
I think, the key to me is prioritization. And also be aware of the fact that if you are constantly working at a pace where you're needed to do 12 hours a day, then there's probably something wrong. And to recognize that that's not going to be sustainable. There are periods, like I was saying about when you're closing a deal, you just have to go into a tunnel and you just have to say, this is what it is. But if that's become your life permanently, then, you need to do something about it. And we were also talking about burnout and the signs of that. And be aware of the warning signs that you're starting to get, starting to burn out. If you're getting agitated and week after week, you can't think of anything other than work, then there's probably something wrong. And I would recommend people just to be aware of that and to try and take some steps too. But there again, if you've got other things in your life, they will at least distract you there. And make sure those other things are not just going out and getting rip-roaringly drunk, which is mind you, that's another thing that's changed, by the way, in the financial services industry. People used to be a lot more hard drinking. Okay. That culture has also really changed over the last few years. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And I guess you're wearing so many different hats. But all the things that you're doing, how do you switch those hats quickly and go into different?
That's the skill, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, it's on a Thursday night when I go to my Toastmasters club.
Yeah, and let's dive into that.
No, I've just passed 30 years as a Toastmaster. So
congratulations.
It has been a very constant point in my life. I mean, it's a Toastmasters International is a club that helps people to develop their communication leadership skills. I was a founder member of London Olympian Speakers, which is based in Gloucester Road. And I've been there since 2003 when we started. So before that, I was in Polish Toastmasters. It is a wonderful thing, and I'd recommend it really to any of your listeners. There are loads of clubs all over the world. They all have different characters. They meet on different days, and find the one that suits you. But it's about learning how to be an effective communicator. And as I was saying, on a sports analogy, the idea that you would go out and play rugby if you hadn't trained, if you hadn't worked with your team and developed those skills. And yet so many people go out and do a best man speech when they've never actually
shaking.
even thought about the skill set you need in order to be a communicator. And the only way you can learn to be an effective communicator is do speech after speech after speech after speech. Definitely. Get the feedback. At times it's frustrating because you're getting the same feedback over and over again. You think, how am I going to stop speaking so quickly? And eventually something clicks and you learn how to slow down. And, so it is a useful thing.
No, that's good because we're talking about at university. We're at the same university.
Yeah.
And often the presentations are the assignments that our peers find the most difficult. And I don't think there's enough training on how do you communicate effectively? How do you stand up in front of a crowd and pitch, essentially? What tips would you give students listening or young professionals who are pitching and presenting? Practical things to communicate more effectively.
Well, I think it's about understanding your own style.
Yeah.
It's about, so there's not a sort of rule book that says you do that. But it's about how do you talk, and maybe start off from how would you talk in a small setting like we are, just the three of us, and then thinking about how would I scale that up to talk to a larger audience. But really, the main thing is you just try things, and whether it's at Toastmasters or anywhere else where you can find the opportunity to try different things, try out different styles, see what works. Another tip I would give is, I've seen so many people talking about presentations at work, and they think the presentation is the PowerPoint, the amazing 30-page PowerPoint.
Aesthetically pleasing.
That's got all these amazing graphics and these custom animations that does this, that, and the other. And just think, your presentation is what you say. Yeah. Your presentation is how you connect to the audience. The PowerPoint is the visual aid.
Yes,
that's the thing that is allowing you to illustrate some points better. So one very simple thing is turn off the projector when you're speaking. Just turn it on when you need it and turn it off, because if you've got a huge slide there that's just distracting, it doesn't really matter what you're saying, your audience is reading the slide. So yes, I mean, I find the process of preparing those slides probably is getting you into the right mindset. It's helping you to think about the things and get your data down. But what's your message? Yeah. And your message is not a series of graphics and slides. It's what you say. It's the story you're building about the business, or whatever it is that you want to do. And, that's a good starting point.
And you were saying the one thing that you've improved on in the past 20 years is slowing down.
Slowing down.
And that's exactly it. And it's like you have so many thoughts and you want to say because you're so excited. But then you've said that you've learned to like really, simplify that into one core message.
It took me 20 years. 20 years of Toastmasters. So to actually, and I was getting fed up of evaluators saying, Edward really needs to slow down. And I'd be like, okay. And I finally realized that it's about the content and about making sure you don't have too much content in a speech. And I mean, a good rule of thumb on any speech or any presentation is, what's the one sentence summary? And if you can't summarize that presentation, that speech in one sentence, then of course it's going to have too much material in it and you're going to go quickly.
We'll dive into the labour market.
Labour market,
and us being students, we're seeing the pain point of employability in this day and age, and how hard it is to stand out in such a competitive market, especially in business and finance and entrepreneurship and standing out in that. But what are your thoughts on standing out in such a competitive?
Well, the first thing to say is, I mean, I do really, really feel for graduates these days, and I mean, interestingly, when I graduated, it was just after a big recession and banks and firms were just beginning to recruit again. I think part of the reason why they sent me to Poland in retrospect was it was kind of easier to slip somebody into fast growing emerging markets than it was. London was still reeling from the early 90s recession.
Yeah.
But I think the pathways have got harder and less clear. I mean, yes, as you say, I was at Cambridge, so maybe I was lucky in the sense that we had the milk rounds and they all came round, and they came to you and you spent time with them and whatever else. I mean, these days I know that's gone. I do think it's terribly hard now, and I think that the process is difficult, but it's not impossible. And I think to me the elements are really I can talk to sort of interviews because that's the thing that I do a lot of. I mean, applications I think are harder, but they're kind of connected. To me, I think going into I've interviewed, I mean, literally hundreds of people for the roles that we've had, with very few, and for quite a small number of posts. And I mean, I think the first thing to say is that for somebody of my generation, we need to be educated in how the labour market works today. For me, when I first started to see CVs for recent graduates, and you'd see people who'd got 6 months here, 6 months here, 6 months here, your initial reaction is, can't stick at anything. Gen Z, exactly. I really can't commit to anything. And then you would ask, well, okay, why did you only do 6 months? And they'd say, well, that was a 6-month contract. That was the contract I was offered and I did it. Yeah. And it made me realize that the labour market has fundamentally changed. A lot of people are on short-term contracts. So, I mean, one clear piece of advice I would say is recognize that the person opposite you may not know how it is these days. And the same goes for people leaving university and, not getting their dream job right away. Somebody who's stacking shelves in Sainsbury's or who's working as a waiter. And first of all, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, you are learning skills there that are very, very transferable because you're dealing actively with customers. You're learning to go into work every day and to deal with this. You're dealing with conflict and all the rest of it. So certainly don't feel that because you haven't worked in a bank before that you can't apply to a bank. Yeah. And just remember the person opposite may not know how it is these days. I mean, obviously if they've got kids or children of that age, they may have more appreciation of it. But to me, it's an understanding of, educate them as well. And this is how it is today. So I think within the interview process, I mean, the obvious thing and the thing sometimes that really frustrates me is make sure you've done your research. With the internet, and that's another thing that's changed in my lifetime. Yeah. You can find so much information.
ChatGPT.
You can find so much information.
Yeah, and it's very true.
Just make sure you know that you've read everything, that you understand the company, that you know what they do. Because when somebody comes in and they haven't done the research, it's like, well, it's such a waste of your time because, am I going to spend half the interview educating you on what we do as a company? So just do that research. And I think the other thing to be conscious of is, make sure that nobody expects somebody to work for you for the rest of their lives. It's not that you're coming in here saying, especially not a small company like ours. I mean, I know you're going to work for us for a few years, but I need to know that firstly, you understand what you're doing here, but secondly, it fits with your career perspective. I mean, one of the things that can be very frustrating is when somebody comes in and they really want to be an accountant. They can't get a training contract. So they come to interview and say, oh yeah, well, I'm still doing my accountancy exam. Oh, would you pay for them, by the way? And say, well, I'm not hiring for an accountant here. Yeah. I'm not hiring, I've got an accountant. This is a different job. This is a job that it doesn't mean that you can't continue to work on that, but just be aware that we're not here to sort of facilitate that. Yeah. Whereas if you're sort of, you can build that into a different story, which is, look, I'm doing this. This is good. This is what I want to do. I understand what job you're offering, and it fits into my life, what I'm trying to do. I think if you can build that story, and not in and also the other thing is not in a sort of forced way, because fundamentally, if the job is not right for you, then you're not going to be happy and it's not going to last. And it's in nobody's interest to end up in a job that doesn't work. I mean, we use probation periods very actively because I think the real interview is when somebody arrives and when they start doing the job. Yeah. And, I think it also, if you take that view, then it allows you to take more chances on people because you think, well, okay, fine, show me through doing that. And, I think that can be the real job interview. But then when you think about it in that sense, forcing your way through an interview, sort of bending and twisting in such a way that you answer all the questions the right way so that you get the job, then there's the moment when you start doing the job and it's like, this isn't right for you.
Actually, another question. So, I mean, for students that, let's say, they're doing undergrad, so while they're doing their study, what sort of skill set that they can achieve while they're doing their study? For example, let's say they want to land a finance job and they're in the second year of their study. While they're studying, what sort of activities or kind of certificates do they need to kind of have on the top of their degree to kind of just that employers like that?
Yes. Well, again, I think it's one of the sections I always look at. I'm probably not typical, but one of the sections I always look at, or it's actually two sections, I always look at on somebody's CVs are their hobbies and interests. Because to me, I think that gives you an opportunity to see something about someone. And the fact that somebody has hobbies and interests, I think they will have developed skills there. So whether that's something sporting, whether that's something that they've been a chairman of a particular organization, or whatever it is, or the Frisbee Society, whatever it is, it's something there that you think, they're getting out there and they're doing different things. And the other one I'm always interested in is languages, particularly as I'm quite into languages. Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is putting, basic conversational this, that, or the other, I mean, is not particularly useful. You need to think about, can you use that language for work? But certainly don't be shy to put about the language skills you've got, because that again can be extremely useful. In terms of, and I think the other thing is, a lot of what you study at university can be applied. I mean, I think often about the paper I really enjoyed at university was the labour market paper, learning about how the labour market works, because actually HR is always going to be a big part of your job. Yes. So understanding a bit about how that works can be valuable. So it may not be directly connected to what you do, but there's skills around that. So I mean, I think I think anything you do can be applied. And it's about sort of being a well-rounded person as well.
Yeah. Would you recommend for someone who is considering going to the business world after university, would you recommend going into a more entrepreneurial startup or like a more structured big organization? And what's your opinion on that? And I guess you learn different things in both.
Yeah. Well, I think the answer to that is it depends a lot on your personality type.
Yeah.
I mean, going into an entrepreneurial situation, you are going to have to roll your sleeves up. And I think the disadvantage of a small company is that it can't offer you the sort of the career pathway that maybe your you're thinking about, I'd like to do this, then that. I mean, I mentioned earlier on that I started off in commercial paper, then I was a relationship manager, then I found trade finance. If you're in a company that just does trade finance, it's not going to, there's only kind of limited latitude you've got to move. But on the other hand, you'll learn quickly and you will be given responsibility very quickly, because there's no sort of sense of, well, what grade are you? Oh, are you an AVP? Are you a VP? Whatever else, you do this. It's just get on with it.
Get on with it. That's the key message of the podcast.
Yeah. Large organizations, though, they do offer you that ability to move from place to place. I think that, the disadvantage is that you can get lost if you're not careful. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to be able to navigate and learn to to find mentors and to understand the organization.
And in you reflecting on your career and what you're doing now, what would you say has been like one of the most defining moments in your professions, and what have you taken forward from that?
Yeah, I think it's, as I say, I think for me, it's the sense of the sense of achievement comes when you do things and you make things happen. Yes. And you get things done. And there are moments when you think, wow. I mean, having set up a company and then you see you're employing people and they are enjoying their lives and they're growing, that's absolutely fantastic. When you have happy clients who say, yeah, you've done that, it can be, it sounds trite, but it's not. You kind of, you have a sense of achievement that comes out of that. Or for that matter, actually, and I'll say as well, people you've trained and people that you've mentored, and you see them making their own careers. And you see them, taking it even further than I ever would, and building their careers. I mean, we really did. I mean, back in the day, we were really training the cadre of trade finance people in Poland. And, many of them have gone on to do absolutely amazing things, both in banking, but also outside of that. And if you think, and I mean, I guess Toastmasters as well, I mean, it's exactly the same. I mean, we've given people voices over the years who've then gone on and used those voices to achieve things. And so, that is a sort of personal legacy that, you can feel very proud occasionally. And I think that, particularly if you've really sort of mentored somebody individually and they've gone on, that can be a great thing. If you're in any setting and somebody comes up to you and says, I would like you to mentor me, that's quite a compliment to give to someone, because you're saying the way you come across to me, the way you are, is you're somebody that I would like to be like. Yeah. And it can be for, across, it could be for something professional, it could be for something personal. It could just be because you find somebody inspiring. And mentoring doesn't always mean, some formal program. It could just mean occasionally going out for lunch and chatting about what that person does.
And I guess it also keeps you accountable if you have someone, asking the questions. Because I think with entrepreneurship, it's not just about having ideas. I'm sure you've experienced it's about doing those ideas and being a doer. But I guess having that mentor, it's so helpful because it just, it's a small step by step in the same direction. And I know I struggled with this in the past, and I'm still figuring out how to get those ideas and actually act on those ideas when I get those. But can you speak into that? Like when you get an idea and you have a plan, like what are the practical, step-by-step things that you've done and that you've seen people do that help getting that idea into reality?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the context. I mean, in a large organization, these sort of major expenditure programs or new product lines or anything else, there's a kind of defined process by which you get buy-in from senior managers. You have to go through a whole process of investment planning and all the rest of it. So in a large organization, it is a well-defined path, but can be a very frustrating one.
Yeah.
In a small organization, yes, you've got much more latitude, but of course, you've also got to kind of think about how are you going to do it with external parties and planning it. So, I mean, I think they have very different elements. I mean, I think in any entrepreneurial setting, the important thing is that you have a group of people. I mean, very few people are sole entrepreneurs. It's normally people coming together to do something. So you need to find a group of people that you want to work with and can contribute, and where there are balances. And in all cases, I'm a big believer, by the way, in high performance teams, and it's also a thing about hiring, that anyone who's sort of badging themselves as I can do everything, a bit like when you see them on The Apprentice, I'm good at absolutely everything.
Yeah.
It's like no, you're not. You have some skills, and successful teams are built on groups of people who have different skill sets.
Yeah.
I mean, when I talked about being an RM, I realized it was a relationship manager. I realized it wasn't for me. I found that sort of side of selling, of going out for long lunches with clients and all the rest of it was just never really my thing. I was always the product guy. But I have so much respect. I have so much respect for salespeople. I think, that ability to go out, to persuade, to present ideas, to get the deal, to be tenacious, to get the deal in, to fight for it. I have so much respect for that. And I will always therefore support salespeople, because, if they need me in on their pitch to answer the technical questions, then I will do that. And, I think part of, a core part of any organization, large or small, is that you're bringing people together who are all pushing in the same direction, and where their skill sets are complementary to each other. And that relies on people understanding what their skill sets are, what makes them happy, what they're good at, and being honest about the things that they're not good at. And therefore finding people around them who have those complementary skill sets and abilities, because that's what makes a high performance team. And in an entrepreneurial setting, if you get that wrong, you will fail, because your company will fail. So it really does matter. And there again, on the hiring front, I mean, when you're bringing people in, you're constantly thinking, I need people who complement what I do, and frankly, who are better at me than what I do. Because it's no good in bringing in people who are just going to look up to me as some kind of, whatever. I need somebody who's going to turn around and say to me, no, you're doing that wrong. Or that's not how we do it these days. Or,
that's,
that's really important.
That's such a good point. I don't know whether you have any questions or anything to add on to that.
Yeah. I mean, nothing to add. You've pretty much covered everything. But actually, I thought, let's just get a bit personal, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I was thinking maybe after a week of working, a tough week, how do you kind of unwind? Or is it like reading books or podcasts?
Going to the gym?
What sort of information you consume? I'm
really going to surprise you now. My main hobby, my main hobby is Eurovision Song Contest.
Oh, brilliant!
I love that. That's amazing.
So I'm a lifelong fan of Eurovision.
That's amazing.
And it is really the counterpart to what I do. It's a strange hobby to have. Frankly speaking, quite an expensive hobby, but because you are traveling around. But no, I've been to 14 contests live.
Wow!
And I have and it's something. I've got a great group of friends. We get together. You get to travel to all different places.
Awesome.
Nice.
And it's a wonderful mixture of things for me, Eurovision. So it is I love the languages, I love the music, I love the culture, I love the travel, and a great group of people. So I think the point I'm illustrating there is you need things outside of your immediate life, where you get to meet people who are different from you. So certainly in the season, there's a well-trodden path of a VPN watching television from all corners of the earth to watch the Armenian national final one week, and obviously the Swedish selection process, which goes on for week after week during the depths of winter. You're watching all of this glorious Schlager music from Sweden. So that's a different thing. And then I have more usual hobbies like going to the gym and
you went to the gym this morning.
I went to the gym this morning.
Impressive. You're an early bird, as you said.
An early bird, yeah, absolutely. I was actually demonstrating step aerobics this morning, so it's probably not a way you would have expected me to start a Saturday morning.
Yeah, wide awake, ready for the podcast. Well, that's amazing, and I think we're going to wrap this up now. Would love to hear, has there been a consistent habit or value that you've had since you were a young boy that you still carry to this day?
It's a very good question. And I think there's two I would say. One is that never ask somebody to do something that you can't do yourself. And by that, I mean, I think as a manager, as a leader, you need to be able to say, I have done what you've done and what I'm asking you to do, and to be able to show you can do it. Now, you may do it better than me because you've got a different skill set, because you have, so frankly, you're younger than me, but I could do it too. And I think it's important that people know that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I think you will, as a leader, be, not very strong. And the second is what I've always said about rolling your sleeves up, which is I actually had a colleague who was brilliant on this, who said, when people say to you, who's going to do that? You say, initially, I'll do it. Because rather than get tied up on I need to hire 50 people to do this, in order to get something going. I mean, my career has been all about starting things up. It's maybe something I haven't focused on. I've always been starting things up. And part of starting things up is just saying, if necessary, I'll do it. Now, the flip side of that is you need to know when you're going to say, I'm going to stop doing that and I'm going to find somebody else to do that. But if you kind of get hung up on this idea that I need to hire somebody to do this, or I need to pay somebody external to do this, it's much harder to get things going. So taking that view of, if necessary, I'll do it, I think is there. So those would be the two things I would say in terms of values.
No, that's great.
That's great.
And what would be the last question? What would be one takeaway that you, for whoever's listening, that you want them to know, like a simple message from the podcast? Everything that you shared was one thing that you want to tell whoever's listening about.
Yes. I mean, I think for me, your career you're only going to get one career in your life, and it is the stuff of your life. And actually, I've not regretted any of the things I've done. It's not always been great. There have been some very, very difficult times. There have been some real challenges. But, if the alternative is doing something boring and something that, doesn't really challenge you, you're not going to enjoy your life as much. So I think, for me, going to Eastern Europe was really, really important. And I'm so glad I did it. I got it out of my system. And I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, but I am. And, it's certainly different to how I imagined.
Yeah. And
even if things don't work out, then at least you tried and at least you were doing something. Because I don't think anyone wants to get to old age and just feel like you didn't really do much with your life,
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of the things that I've done. So I would say, get out there and do it. And if it doesn't work, never mind. But, let it be the stuff of your life.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
No, that's amazing. And I guess that wraps up the episode today. So thank you, Edward, for everything you shared and all the insight. Yeah. I know I'm going to go home and rewatch it and listen to what you said, because it's so helpful. It's so helpful for us as young people and for those listening. But for those listening, thank you for tuning in.
If someone wants to find you, they can reach out to your LinkedIn. Is that right?
By all means, yes. Yeah. By all means. Or come along to our Toastmasters Club.
Yes, come along to Toastmasters. We're going to be booked in for the next one. So yes, for those listening, thank you so much for tuning in to the Big Smoke Chronicles, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.